I trusted my sister with everything. While I was away serving my country overseas, she was the one who promised to take care of my accounts, my home, and anything that needed attention back home. I thought I was protecting her, turns out I was just giving her the keys to destroy me. It started with a simple email from my bank, saying a large transfer had been made. My heart dropped. When I called, the amount nearly made me sick. My entire military savings, years of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights, gone. I was thousands of miles away, in uniform, defending people who couldn't defend themselves, and my own sister had just emptied my account. Why? To fund her affair. Not her rent, not her children's needs, not even a medical emergency. No, she blew my life savings on secret vacations, hotel rooms, and a gift for a man who wasn't even her husband. And the worst part? She looked me dead in the eye later and said, "You'll get over it. You're a soldier, you've been through worse." That was the moment something inside me snapped. I had fought enemies in combat zones, but nothing prepared me for the betrayal that came from my own blood. And she thought I'd just swallow it? Not a chance. 2 weeks later, she was sitting in a nearly empty apartment, her credit cards maxed out, her lover long gone, and her bank account frozen. She had no idea how I pulled it off so fast, but I did. And I didn't just take back my money. I took back my dignity. This is the story of how my sister stole everything from me, and how I made sure she lost it all when I first joined the military. I made a promise to myself. I would work hard, save every dollar I could, and build a life worth coming home to. I wasn't born into wealth. My parents worked themselves to the bone just to put food on the table, and I knew from a young age that if I wanted stability, I'd have to earn it. So, every deployment, every overtime shift, every moment I spent sweating under a foreign sun, or freezing in the middle of nowhere, it all had a purpose. I was building my future. And I thought my family, especially my sister Emma, understood that. Emma was 2 years older than me. She had this charm about her, the kind of person who could walk into a room and have everyone eating out of her hand in minutes. But she also had a history of poor choices, especially when it came to money and relationships. Still, I loved her. She was my sister, and I believed that deep down, she had a good heart. Over the years, I'd helped her out of more than a few financial messes, unpaid rent, car repairs, overdue bills, but I never held it over her. Family helps family. Before my most recent deployment, I had to make some quick arrangements. I wouldn't be able to manage my finances from the base. And I needed someone I trusted to keep an eye on my accounts in case something came up. Naturally, I thought of Emma. She agreed without hesitation, even telling me she'd be honored to help. She promised to treat my money like it was her own, and I believed her. I gave her access to my savings account, explaining that it was only for emergencies. I even joked, "Don't go buying a yacht while I'm gone," and she laughed, saying she'd take better care of it than I would. For the first few months overseas, everything seemed fine. The base internet was spotty, and my contact with the outside world was limited to quick calls or short emails when I could get a signal. Whenever I checked in, Emma assured me everything back home was running smoothly. "Your plants are alive. Your mail stacked neatly, and your savings are safe," she'd say. I never doubted her. Then came the email. I was in the middle of a scorching day on patrol when I finally got back to my bunk and saw it, an alert from my bank about a large transfer. At first, I thought it might be some sort of automatic system error. But when I opened it, my stomach twisted into a knot. Almost my entire savings, years of disciplined living, had been transferred out in one lump sum. The number on the screen made my throat go dry. I immediately tried to call Emma, but the connection was terrible. It took 2 days before I could get a clear line. When she finally picked up, her tone was casual, almost too casual. I didn't even say hello. "Emma, where's my money?" I demanded. There was a pause. Then she sighed, as if I was overreacting. "Look, I was going to tell you. I just needed to borrow it for a while." Borrow it. My voice was shaking, partly from anger and partly from disbelief. "That's my life savings. What could you possibly need that much money for?" She hesitated, then blurted out something that felt like a punch to the chest. It's complicated. Okay? I've been seeing someone, and we wanted to get away. Just for a while. I was silent for a moment, hoping I'd misheard. Are you telling me you stole my savings to take some guy on vacation? It's not like that, she snapped. He's special. You wouldn't understand. And it's not stealing, I'll pay you back. Her words were like a match to gasoline. I had been risking my life in hostile territory, eating meals out of a pouch, sleeping on a thin cot, while she was blowing my money on hotel rooms and luxury dinners with a man who wasn't even her husband. Yes, she was married that night. I barely slept. It wasn't just the betrayal that burned me, it was the sheer disrespect. She hadn't even tried to justify it in a way that made sense. No emergency. No crisis. Just selfishness, dressed up as a love. And what stung the most was that she genuinely seemed to believe I would get over it. The next day, I called the bank and froze every account I could still control. Unfortunately, the bulk of my savings was gone, transferred into her name and already spent. I started making notes, writing down every detail of our conversation, every transaction I could trace. Every person I might contact when I got home. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I made myself a promise. I would get my money back, and Emma would regret the day she decided to take me for a fool, and in that moment, somewhere between anger and cold determination, I stopped thinking of her as my sister. She had chosen her side. Coming back home after deployment is always a strange feeling. The air feels different, the streets look smaller, and the noise is too quiet compared to the chaos you get used to overseas. But this time, I didn't come home to rest. I came home for war, not with an enemy in uniform, but with someone who shared my blood. I didn't tell Emma I was returning earlier than planned. She thought I'd be overseas for another 2 months, which gave me the perfect advantage. The first thing I did after landing was head straight to the bank. I sat down with the branch manager, a serious-looking man in a navy suit, and laid out the situation. I explained every suspicious transaction, every transfer she'd made, and the fact that the account she drained was solely in my name before I gave her access. His expression tightened. If you can prove this wasn't authorized, he said, we might have options. I handed over printed copies of my deployment orders and the signed account agreement from before I left. It was clear, she wasn't a joint owner, just a temporary authorized user. That detail gave me leverage. The manager promised to freeze her account pending investigation, but he also warned me, she's already spent most of it. Even if we recover anything, it may not be the full amount. I nodded. I'm not just after the money, I said. I'm after the lesson. Next, I called a lawyer I knew from my old unit, a guy who had gone into civilian law after leaving the service. I told him everything, and he didn't mince words. Legally, she's in hot water. Morally, she's garbage. We can hit her with a civil suit and maybe even push for criminal charges if we can prove fraud. He agreed to start the paperwork immediately, but legal pressure was only part of my plan. Emma needed to feel the weight of her betrayal in a way that went beyond courtrooms. She had built her whole life on appearances, fancy dinners, designer clothes, the image of a perfect marriage. I knew that if I could pull the curtain back and show people the truth, her world would collapse faster than any legal case could manage. I started by contacting her husband, Mark. He and I had never been particularly close, but I knew he was a good man, the kind of guy who worked hard, paid his bills, and assumed his wife was faithful. I called him and said, Mark, we need to talk. It's about Emma, and where she's been spending my money. At first, he didn't believe me. Then I emailed him screenshots of the transactions, payments to luxury hotels, high-end restaurants, even flight bookings for 2 destinations she'd never mentioned. When he saw the receipts, he went silent. I heard his breathing change. On the line. Finally, he said, she told me her friend Jessica paid for those trips. She said they were girls' weekends. Mark, I said quietly, I'm sorry. But she wasn't with Jessica. That night, I heard from him again. He had confronted her, and the argument was explosive. She admitted to the affair, and worse, she admitted she had used my savings to fund it. He told me he was filing for divorce immediately. One domino had fallen. Meanwhile, I quietly reached out to the man she had been seeing. I wasn't aggressive. In fact, I pretended to be understanding. I told him, "She told me you didn't know about the money." Whether that was true or not didn't matter. I wanted him to believe I wasn't after him. But I dropped one little seed. "Just so you know, she told the police she thinks you pressured her into it." It was a lie, but it worked. 2 days later, he cut off all contact with her. Another domino. While her personal life crumbled, I took aim at her finances. I contacted every credit card company she used and informed them of the pending fraud investigation. Since the accounts were under review, her cards were frozen. She went from spending like royalty to not being able to buy groceries in less than a week. I still hadn't spoken to her directly. That was intentional. I wanted her to stew, to feel the isolation. But I knew eventually she'd come running to me, not out of love or guilt, but out of desperation. And when she did, I'd be ready to make my terms clear on the 8th day. After I landed, I finally saw her in person. She showed up at my apartment looking pale and frantic. "I don't know what you told Mark, or the bank, or anyone, but everything's falling apart." She snapped the moment I opened the door. I just looked at her and said, "You did that yourself." Her eyes flashed with anger. "I'm your sister. You're supposed to help me." I stepped aside, letting her walk in, but my voice stayed cold. "You stopped being my sister the moment you stole from me. And now, Emma, you're going to learn what happens when you cross someone who's been trained to fight back." She swallowed hard, maybe realizing for the first time that I wasn't bluffing. The real payback hadn't even started yet. Emma had always cared more about her image than anything else. She thrived on attention, the social media posts of her perfect marriage, the bragging about her hard-earned vacations, the constant parade of photos showing her in expensive clothes with that self-satisfied smile. I knew if I could strip that away, it would hurt her more than freezing her bank accounts or taking legal action. Money could be replaced. Reputation? Once it's destroyed, it rarely recovers. After our brief, tense meeting at my apartment, I started my next move. I went through every transaction she made with my money and cross-checked them with dates and locations. Then I compiled them into a neat, time-stamped document. Alongside each transaction, I added screenshots of her Instagram and Facebook posts. From the same days, the romantic dinner photos, the hotel balcony selfies, the shopping sprees. The captions were almost laughable. One read, "Sometimes you just have to spoil yourself, you deserve it." I almost choked reading it, knowing she was spoiling herself with the money I had bled for. With the evidence compiled, I sent it anonymously to a few people who mattered in her social circle, the ones who loved gossip, the ones who couldn't resist sharing a juicy scandal. I didn't even need to explain much. The file spoke for itself. Within a day, the whispers started. Friends began unfollowing her. A few even confronted her directly online, asking in the comments where she'd gotten the money for those getaways. She tried to delete and block them, but the damage was done. The screenshots were already circulating in private group chats. At the same time, Mark's divorce filing became public record. In our small community, it didn't take long for people to put two and two together. Emma went from being invited to every party to being the name people lowered their voices to talk about. I wasn't finished. I knew she was desperate to keep her job. It was the last stable thing she had. She worked as an office manager for a mid-sized company, and her boss was a stickler for integrity. I didn't have to lie. I simply sent an anonymous envelope to her HR department containing proof of her unauthorized use of my funds, along with the fact that she was under investigation for financial misconduct. I never said she stole from her employer. I didn't have to. The mere suggestion was enough for them to temporarily suspend her until the matter was resolved. With her finances frozen, her husband gone, her affair partner vanished, her Social circle turning cold, and now her job on the line. Emma's once perfect facade was crumbling faster than she could rebuild it. And still, she didn't apologize. Not once. About a week into this phase of my plan, I saw her again. She was waiting outside my apartment building, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was unkempt, her makeup smeared, and her clothes, once pristine, were wrinkled and mismatched. "You have to stop this," she said the moment I stepped outside. "You've made your point. I'll pay you back, I swear. Just stop." I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You think this is about the money? You could hand me every cent right now and it wouldn't change anything. You humiliated me. Emma. You took advantage of the fact that I trusted you more than anyone. Now you're getting a taste of what you dished out." Her voice cracked. "I'm your sister. Blood is supposed to be thicker than water. Blood means nothing if it's poisoned," I replied flatly. She tried to plead, but I walked away, leaving her standing on the sidewalk. I could feel her eyes burning into my back, but I didn't turn around. She had chosen her path the moment she made that transfer. That night, I sat at my desk and thought about my next step. The financial damage was done. The social humiliation had begun. But I wanted one final blow, something that would make sure she never forgot the lesson I was teaching her. It had to be public, undeniable, and irreversible. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. A mutual friend messaged me, saying Emma had been invited, out of pity, no doubt, to a charity gala the following weekend. It was the last place in town where she could still pretend to be someone she wasn't. I smiled to myself. If she wanted to walk into a room and pretend she was still the Emma everyone used to admire, then I'd make sure the truth walked in right behind her. After the gala, Emma disappeared from public view. No more social media posts, no more carefully staged photos, no more loud declarations about her blessed life. She'd gone silent, and for a while, I thought she might try to lay low and slowly rebuild whatever scraps she had left. But I wasn't finished. She had taken everything from me without a second thought. Now I was going to make sure she had nothing left to take from anyone else. The day after the gala, my lawyer called. "The investigation is moving fast," he said. "Given the evidence you provided and her lack of cooperation, we can push for a judgment to garnish any future earnings. She won't be able to keep a steady job without paying you back legally." That was exactly what I wanted. Money was never going to erase what she did, but stripping away her ability to live in comfort would be a constant reminder of the cost of her betrayal. We filed the paperwork, and within a week, a court order was in motion. Meanwhile, Mark's divorce was progressing even faster. He had already moved out of their house, leaving Emma responsible for the mortgage and all the bills. With her job suspension still in effect and her credit cards frozen, she couldn't keep up. I knew what was coming before she did. Foreclosure. I didn't need to lift a finger for this part. Her own irresponsibility was doing the work for me, but I still had one final card to play. Emma had a small investment account she thought was her safety net. It wasn't much, a few $1,000s, but it was all she had left that wasn't already under scrutiny. When I first gave her access to my savings before deployment, she'd added me as a trusted contact on her own accounts for emergency purposes. She must have forgotten about it. My lawyer reminded me that, legally, I could challenge her right to keep that money, since she had used my funds to cover her personal debts during the same period. Within days, that account was frozen too, pending review. When she found out, she showed up at my apartment again, this time looking even worse than before. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair tangled, her hands shaking. She didn't knock, she just started pounding on the door until I opened it. "What do you want, Emma?" I asked, my voice calm but cold. "You've destroyed me," she said, her voice cracking. "I have nothing. No husband, no job, no home, nothing. Are you happy now?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Happy? No. This isn't happiness, Emma. This is justice. You stole from me while I was risking my life overseas. You didn't just take money, you took trust, dignity, and years of sacrifice. And you thought you could walk away without consequences. Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't feel pity. Not anymore. You could have come to me, I continued. If you were in trouble, if you needed help, I would have found a way. But instead, you took what wasn't yours, and you spent it on someone who's not even in your life anymore. That's on you. She tried one last time. We're family. Can't we start over? I shook my head slowly. Family doesn't do what you did. Family protects each other, even when it's hard. You stopped being my sister the moment you decided your affair was worth more than my future. She stared at me for a few seconds, like she was searching for a trace of the old brother who had bailed her out of trouble so many times before. But he was gone. She turned and walked away, her shoulders hunched, and for the first time, I believed. She truly understood the finality of what had happened. 2 weeks later, the court ruling came through. Her wages, if she ever earned any, would be garnished for years. The house was repossessed. She sold off her car to cover basic expenses. The woman who once bragged about her luxury vacations was now sleeping on a friend's couch, with no clear path forward. I didn't celebrate. There was no victory dance, no rush of adrenaline. Just a quiet sense of closure. The damage she had done to me couldn't be fully undone, but I had taken back control. I had made sure she could never again exploit my trust, or anyone else's. Sometimes justice doesn't come in one dramatic moment. Sometimes it comes piece by piece, like dismantling a machine until it can never run again. That's what I did to Emma. And when I looked in the mirror after it was all over, I saw a man who had stood up for himself, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Emma's name was now a cautionary tale in our town. People whispered about her. Not out of admiration, but as a warning. And that was enough for me. She had built her life on lies and greed, and I had simply pulled the rug out from under her. In the end, I didn't just take back my savings. I took back my dignity. And for someone like Emma, being penniless wasn't the worst punishment, being exposed was. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to The Silent Revenge for more jaw-dropping tales of justice served cold.